Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer LB1002-400-626. This is a relatively unusual spring hinge. We don't sell these often, but when we do, we make videos of them. This is a spring hinge. This is an unusual spring hinge in the sense that it is a full surface spring hinge. This is meant to be applied to the face of a door and frame and is meant to basically work in the reverse sort of action. When the door opens, it will close back shut, leaving the hinge in an orientation like this. It'll want to go further. And we have, I've seen these hinges installed, kind of holding it upside down. Not technically, but I am. I've seen these hinges installed myself multiple times in places like a state park or a national park in the lavatory areas, partition doors, items that are used large quantities of time every single day, and sometimes the original lavatory hardware is long gone. So I've seen surface mounted hinges like these, and that's pretty much where you're going to see these. Where you need to use a hinge like this is where you're certainly not to use a standard hinge like a full mortise hinge. I've seen some people take full mortise hinge and install them in a surface mount pattern, but they're not meant to work that way, and they will, in fact, you can depend on the fact that it'll fail. So if you're doing a full surface mount, do order the right mount. Not that you can't take a full surface, a full mortise type hinge and surface mount it, even though the swag on the hinge leaves would be not conducive for that. But the spring construction on the inside, the factory's going to tell you, is not going to work right. Okay. To further that, the factory saying that it's not going to work right, the engineer at Bommer has personally conducted tests of this type of hinge where he's witnessed it or know that it has exceeded several million cycle beyond grade 1, which is a million. So these hinges just don't break, but this is a pretty special one, the full surface. So the LB1002, that means a few things. Let's go over what it means. That means that it is a non-hold open, adjustable spring tension, full surface spring hinge. They will tell you that it's generally seen on lavatory doors. Okay, this is made of brass. May be somewhat difficult to tell on the camera, but what gives it away for sure is the 626 designation of the hinge itself. Okay, that means two things. It means it's made of brass and that it has a satin chrome finish applied to it. The most durable of artificial finishes, this would be considered. Satin chrome would be. Okay. 1/4 inch radius corner is also indicated in that part number as well. Not that it really matters so much because you're not fitting it into a mortise. I'm sure that you're probably not. But I would think that a radius corner would be preferable in a surface mount application so there's not a hard outside corner that's happening on the hinge. With a lavatory piece of hardware, you're going to get, because it's intended for lavatory applications, you're going to get a couple of steel. I'm sure these are steel. They're not. They're brass. I missed that. Backer plates, because they're going to want you to through bolt this through the door, just like that. Door and jamb. And then you're going to get through bolts. Okay. Because these are intended for lavatory doors, you are going to be getting the length of those bolts consistent with the thickness of lavatory material. 3/4 inch, something in that range, for a thickness of the jamb and the door. Now, you will, because they're spring hinges, you'll certainly get a tension rod, and tension pin. A tension rod for every order that you place, a tension pin for every hinge that you order. Okay. Also with the package, you'll get installation instructions. Those are linked to down below. And let's take a closer look at this material. I think people purchase regular spring hinges when they're for a full surface mount because they believe that it'll work and because they're so much less expensive. They certainly are. However, if you have a surface mount, you're going to need an LB1002. Now, the link to the installation instructions gives us the dimensional properties of the hinge. The 400 in the part number refers to the height of the hinge. This is 4-inch. This is not necessarily going to have a 4-inch width, even though it does. But with a hinge like this, the dimension really refers to the height when you have an unusual hinge. Something that's half mortise, half surface, swing clear. These hinges are generally rated in terms of, or called out in terms of the height of the hinge. This happens to certainly be 4-inch wide as well, but it would be a 4-inch tall hinge. The 626, we discussed that earlier, solid brass with a satin chrome finish. It's going to be available on any, with practically any finish that you want. Because it's an architectural base material, Bommer can make, you know, your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, nickels, satin, polished, oil-rubbed bronze. And because they're Bommer, they can probably do any finish, really. If you want antique nickel, I bet that they can do that. I've never asked them for a 616 finish or a US 11 antique bronze. They may or may not entertain that, but they can do lots of the common finishes naturally. So the installation instructions are there, and let's review that now. And let's go over it so we know exactly what it is that we're dealing with. Now let's dig into the installation instructions. And let's just start at installation instructions. Step 1. Prepare door and style as shown in figures 1 and 2. Yes, 1 and 2. 2, we see they want those hinges located in the places that they do. Usually when you have spring hinges, you'll see them 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. That wouldn't be the case with a partition door like this, even though that it could be. But because you're dealing with doors that are relatively light and a hinge that could probably easily close, I would say if this was a standard full mortise hinge, 3 of them is going to be engineered to handle an 80-pound door. Putting 1 in the middle would be okay in terms of a spring hinge. But those 2 at the top are generally for double acting, where you have a lot of weight going through an open and close, open and then close cycle. When it comes to standard spring hinges, you're taught to put 1 in the middle, 1 at the bottom, go to the top at the very last, because 70% of the door's weight is being hung from that top hinge. So you would usually put a spring hinge there only in the last case scenario. And when you're doing 2, you'd be encouraged to put a ball bearing hinge there. Well, unless you have a full surface ball bearing hinge with a vertical axis of pivoting that's compatible with your spring hinges, you'll put a spring hinge at the top as well. Install the, so they reference figure 1 and 2. I don't see a figure 1. Oh yeah, sure, it's the big image, lower left. Figure 1 is important because they're saying give yourself a 1/16 of an inch margin between the jamb and the door. Figure 2 says, here's where I want you to put them vertically. Okay, 2 inch down, 2 inch up, center of door. Now, install hinges with the adjustment end of hinge up. What that means is the tension collar is what I call that, is what the manufacturer calls it as well, the tension collar. Put that towards the top of the door. You don't have to. You can install it upside down, but the installation instructions are based on it being installed towards the top of the door. Once you've got the door physically hung, you've got your bolts, and I can see here they've given us 4 longs and 4 shorts. I'm sure what they're doing here is allowing us to install these hinges onto doors that are either 3/4 or 1.25" would be my guess. And to test that, I'm going to remove one long and one short, along with two of the female portion of, you know, what you'd call a sex bolt or a binding post. I don't know if sex bolt is appropriate to use in a through bolt where there's a female portion on both sides, in the sense of it might be called a binding post or a binder post. Doesn't really matter what we call it. We'll just call it a through bolt. So if I go with the short one and run that female portion onto either end, I'm for sure going to be able to get that down to 3/4. Am I sure? Sure I am, because of the thickness of the hinge leaf and the thickness of the plate. That little version's going to go for a 3/4 door. Now let's see how thick we can go. And the hinge leaf itself, they don't give us a thickness on the hinge leaf, or at least I don't see it. I'm assuming it's about 130 thousandths thick. I can measure that. I will measure that, so you know the maximum thickness out of the box. And these are likely, I don't know the thread size of this. It could be 1224. I'm tempted to say it's a little bit too big for 1032. When I've got those turned down a couple of times, you'll see that you can get to 1.25. So my theory was correct, that they're going to permit you to do 3/4 up to 1.25 right out of the box. The leaf thickness is 0.95, so I was way off, 0.095. The shim plate is 0.110. So you've got basically 0.2 inch of the material that your bolt is going to go through before you start to really fasten it down. Okay, now adjusting spring tension, adjusting spring torque. Place the door in the closed position. You have no tension on these hinges set at all. That's the way that they ship. Insert the tension lever in the left-hand hole in the adjustment slot as shown in figure 3. Okay, what they're saying is when the tension collar is pointed towards the top of the door, insert it into a hole that's near the left side as you view it, and turn it clockwise. As you turn it clockwise, you're going to reveal new additional holes. And I'm hitting the other end, but as I insert the tension rod. Okay, doing it correct now. I was doing it the opposite way. As you turn that, the way that they're showing, you will reveal new additional holes that are there. It's into one of those new holes that you will insert the tension pin. As I said earlier, for every order that you place, you'll for sure get one tension rod, and for every hinge that you order, you will for sure get one tension pin. And you'll need that original tension pin to install into the hinge to make sure that that works. So, insert the tension lever in the left hand hole in the adjustment slot as shown in figure 3. As you face the hinge, you're going to put it on your left side, right over here. Okay. You will turn it counterclockwise, rotate tension lever to the right, and insert tension lever into the hole. Insert tension lever number 1 to the right, and insert tension lever number 2 in the hole to the left of the tension lever. Remove tension lever number 1 and rotate tension lever 2 to the right, and insert a tension pin loosely into the hole to the left of the tension lever. Okay, I see what they're saying. They're saying because with these hinges, you're certainly going to get 2 tension rods. And it's because when you install these, you have to literally reposition it hole by hole in order to get the tension pin placed to where you need it to be placed, meaning one tension rod's going to put tension on the spring. You need another tension rod to hold the tension on the spring as you then reposition it. Okay, that's what I'm reading from that. Okay, so what they're saying is there are you require 2 tension rods to make this installation, not 1. This is how you're going to do that. You'll insert the tension rod into one of the holes, and I just need to see it enough to be able to get the process started. Okay, you got one. As you turn it to the right, you're going to reveal a new hole. It's into that new hole that you'll eventually insert a tension pin, but until you get an adequate amount of tension stored on the spring, you're going to continue to, okay, now remove this one. Now do this. Set it here. And you're going to continue to work them in this fashion until you have adequate spring tension set. Okay, when you have adequate spring tension set, the installation instructions state basically do it twice, then put in a pin. Test your tension, but you have to use both of the. You're going to need both of the tension rods in order to walk the collar over far enough. Move it over, put the next one. Pull this one out, move it over, put the next one. Pull it out, move it over, put the next one. Eventually, you're going to put a pin. Okay, do 2 holes, I think, is what they're coming to. Set each hinge to, say, 2 holes. Test your operation. Make any adjustments necessary at that point. My error was saying that you needed 1 tension rod. It's easier to use 2 tension rods to do the job, even though I would say you could certainly do it with a tension pin, except that there's really no way to do that because you can't turn it over with a tension pin installed. So you do need to have 2 tension rods to make this project work. So let's go over the instructions slowly. Place door in the closed position. Insert tension lever number 1 into the left-hand hole. Adjustment as shown in Figure 3. Figure 3 is the cross-section. Rotate it to the right. Insert a new tension lever into the number 2 hole to the left of tension number 1. So now you got one this way and one this way. Remove the tension number 1 and rotate the tension 2 to the right. Then insert your tension pin loosely into the hole to the left of the tension lever. Release the tension lever until release the tension lever until the pin makes contact with the hinge. At that point, you'll have tension set on it, and then according to the installation instructions, if desired closing force is not achieved, repeat the above. Kick it over one more time. Crank it over, remove the pin, put the next rod in. Go 1 more hole. Drive tension pin in flush with the hinge tube when closing force is satisfactory. What's really interesting about the world of hardware is just do what I say. Just do what I say. And here's not what I say, but what, sometimes what you're told, just do it. It's really important for you to drive that pin in flush. Okay? And there's a reason why. Because you don't want any projecting hardware off the hinge itself. This is not an exaggeration, I have been contacted by this has come up more than once, but one time in the not so distant past, I was contacted by an attorney who was representing someone who hurt themselves on spring hinges. And while they weren't full surface, they were full mortise, the contractor clearly took nails and used those nails without cleaning the end or the tip over. and they were sticking out. Well, this young girl was waiting for her mom to come out of the changing room and just leaned up against the back of the door in the hinge and started to slowly slide down. And sure enough, it was a couple of inches before the pain registered and she was cutting her back. Now, this pin that's here does not hurt me when I do that. It's not comfortable, but it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't break skin. But you need to drive that flush and get it in the hinge. You don't want it projecting, because projecting hardware is, it's dangerous, is the bottom line. Whether you're walking down a hall and you just hit your wrist on a piece of door lever that's hanging off, or a hinge barrel, you don't want anything projecting. And you'll notice that the manufacturer takes great care that every surface that's out here, because it is projecting, is smooth and flush and flat and does not provide any harm at all. Okay? The pin that's holding the spring assembly, that's completely flush. So you're going to want to make sure that you complete that off, just like they are. Nothing's hanging out, especially with a piece of hinge hardware that can literally come in contact with someone at any time. So, the balance of the extended description information, we've covered everything. The last thing I'd like to point out would be the Bommer logo. And right above it, it says Made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. The name Bommer is thoroughly and utterly synonymous when it comes to spring hinges. Maybe more so for their ubiquitous 3029 series double acting spring hinges, the big hinge, the big hinges you see, black or brass or chrome, whatever, and those double acting doors in restaurants. You'll see them all the time. But when it comes to the science of spring hinges, they're the Nobel Peace Prize winners of the amount of engineering that's gone into that sort of realm, whether it be single acting or double acting spring hinges, whether it be items that will be used on exceptionally heavy doors. They have spring hinges that will handle a 400-pound door. That's impossible to believe, but they do. They've got them 3029s. They've got variations of those where you can get ball tips. You can get them half surface. You can do, of course, the residential spring hinges. You can do the lavatory hardware spring hinges. So if there's ever a spring hinge that you're looking for, I would go right to their catalog, because you'll have the single greatest available presentation of possibilities laid in front of you. And their catalog is well worth the review. But they are also a comprehensive manufacturer of industrial and commercial hinges as well, and many other things that are kind of unique to them. You don't see them often, but you can have a pair of double-acting metal doors with 20 by 20 windows in them in a warehouse distributor building scenario where you've got your big double-acting spring hinges, but then you've got big steel guards that are mounted to the doors themselves. Bommer makes those as well. Anyway, I'm partial to Bommer, and it's because I believe in the Made in USA scenario, my personal opinion. I believe that if I'm selling hinges to someone who, anyway, you get my point. I believe it does matter, and I'm partial to them because the not only their approach to market in terms of domestically manufactured, domestically sourced material, but their approach to engineering. I have been educated. I have been tolerated multiple times from the engineer at Bommer. They have a couple of people in customer service who are phenomenal, 100% of the time, guaranteed. Guaranteed great people. And it's a company that's been doing it for decades. Any questions on the Bommer LB1002 and a 400 and a 626 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.